Okay.
to do.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh my God, thanks for asking me.
Right, guys, before I press record, Lauren was just telling me that she's drinking a non-alcoholic beer, and that is the kind of self-care and self-love that I'm all here for.
Honestly, like, just because I give up alcohol doesn't mean that I can't, like, you know, have my enjoyment, whatever it is, you know?
Definitely. So has work been manic?
Yeah, like, literally, like, manic, like, absolute manic. Like, I actually was working, like, over lockdown, like, in the studio, doing all, like, the online classes, kind of, like, behind the scene technical side. And then, like, the gym started to do, like, outdoor classes, and then the owner was like, why don't you just start bringing all the ambassadors and the influencers and then planning events. So I've been doing that, and it's gone chaotic, really, to be honest.
That's good. So for people that don't know you, can you do a little introduction and tell everyone what
Yeah.
it is that you do?
Okay, so what don't I do? Bloody hell. Yeah, my name's Laura White. I am a motivational speaker, a life coach, and an addictions counsellor. But I'm also currently front of house manager at a gym in Canary Wharf called BXR, and I also am in the Marylebone. I'm helping out with marketing stuff, and then I do some social media stuff on the side. I do social media for, like, my friends, the Collier twins. It's a bit of like a little side gig. But, you know, lockdown, it was like one of those things where, you know, I was furloughed and then I wanted to make money. So I was like, why not do this? And it was just like, you know, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
So people ask me what I do. I actually don't really know what I do.
Your eggs are in a lot of baskets. I love it.
Eggs are in baskets, but I love what I do.
Yeah, of course.
Like, I wake up excited, and I think this is so important for people to understand. Like, money doesn't drive me. What drives me is purpose and passion. So,
and then money follows that, right?
yeah, like, that's it. Like, and it sounds so corny, but, like, I wake up with a smile on my face, so excited for the day. And I think so many people need to know that, because it's not necessarily about, like, how much money you're making. It's not necessarily about, like, how good your job is. It's about waking up and, like, being happy in what you're doing.
100%. Yeah. And it's like, even in elements of like potential burnout or overwork, it's like, I know that I'm potentially burnt out now, or like, I know I have a tendency to burn out, but I do wake up every day and I love what I do. So, like, yeah, I completely agree. So now we know each other through my ProDirect days. So
Not there anymore.
Yeah, no, not there anymore. No, I left there. No, I handed my notice in December and went self-employed in January. So I was a content producer and brand manager, for those of you that don't know, over at ProDirect, and Lauren was an influencer, and I got her to come to quite a few of our events, actually, in the end, wasn't it? And then we just kind of stayed connected through Instagram and that kind of thing. But I was really interested in your backstory, because you're obviously in a great place now. And you're literally loving life, and like you said, you wake up every day with a smile on your face. But has that always been the case?
Hell no. Oh my God.
Can you give the background, please?
Of course.
If you don't mind.
Oh my God, honestly, like, I'm like, I love sharing my story, and that isn't in an arrogant way. I just like people to understand, you know, like I said, you can get out of, you know, complete and utter darkness that I was in, because I was in complete utter darkness from a very, very young age.
Just
you know,
background, Lauren. This, obviously, you know, it's my podcast, Female Feel Good Club, but majority of the girls that follow me have lost their periods or have in the past, and that's through fitness. Like, some is like basically energy imbalance, and there's like elements of like disordered eating and fitness addiction. So that's why I feel like, even though it's slightly different, I feel like people will really relate to some of the things that you've gone through. So yeah, sorry, I'll let you carry on. Please tell us.
Yeah, no, and the funny thing is that I actually lost my period for 6 years. So yeah,
guys, I was just on the podcast, I was just gasping then.
Yeah, I for an eating disorder. So, and through fitness, which I'll go into.
Beginning, we've got Christ, I've only got an hour of your time. How are we going to get through all this?
Well, I can talk about, you know, I can talk a bit all, I can put it all together really.
Okay.
in a so, you know, I grew up in Hertfordshire. I had an incredibly, you know, really, really good private education. Two brothers and sister, in, you know, a really nice house. The reason why I'm sharing this is because I want you to understand, like, you know, on the outside, look like my life was perfect. I had a lot of issues growing up. I had incredibly low self-esteem, incredibly low self-worth. You probably wouldn't have seen it because my way of dealing with my low self-esteem and my low self-worth was being a class clown and, you know, trying to get attention, because that's, you know, where ego is driven. And, you know, I had a lot of trauma in my childhood. So, you know, from a young age, I saw my mum go through breast cancer. I saw one of my siblings go through alcoholism. I saw another sibling of mine go through cancer. I saw my mum at the time, obviously, went, you know, after she got diagnosed with breast cancer, also went through alcoholism. I saw another family member, another sibling, go through an eating disorder. She was being tube fed for 5 years, hadn't eaten a solid food or water. So all of these things, like, you know, at the end of the day, like how I saw life growing up was in a very, very negative way. It was like, if you had my problems, you do the things that I was doing. And I was a very angry child. And it wasn't really about what I was going through. It was about how I saw what I was going through and how, you know, say again?
Like the story you were telling yourself.
Yeah, so like, so the story I would tell myself was, well, fuck my life. I might as well just drink or do drugs or whatever. And at the age of 11 and age of 12, you know, I got introduced to marijuana and I got introduced to smoking cigarettes. And, you know, it took away all the feelings that I felt at that moment in time. And I loved it. At that time, it was the solution to my problem, because my problem was me and I couldn't deal with me, and I couldn't deal with the controlling, you know, the control that I didn't have around me. Yeah. And that's when, you know, at the age of 14, I always had, you know, I came from a very, and I'll go into like the eating disorder side, but like I came from a very like self-obsessed family. Like my dad, I know it sounds really strange, but my dad is a good looking man. You know, my brother is a good looking boy. And like, they were all like, I'm saying is in like my family members, they were very like, you have to train, you have to work hard, you have to look good, you have to, you know, constantly work on your physical as well as your, like, rather than your mental. So I had this overwhelming feeling that I had to compete to be beautiful. So my ideal of being beautiful was like a stick fit model, or like someone that, you know, had incredibly good six pack or abs or whatever. And then at the age of like 16, I basically lost loads of weight, and it fed into me, because when I lost loads of weight, guys gave me so much attention and girls were like, you look amazing. And that's when I thought, like, that was it. Like, me being this skinny is like, I've made it. And I was modeling and I was, you know, doing these incredible things. I was working in clubs and I was surrounding myself around celebrities and well-known people, and that was me and that was my identity. And what happened was, because I was starving myself and because I was overtraining, I lost my period. I didn't get my period back until about 2 years ago.
Wow. So
yeah, 16 to 24, I had no period.
And what other symptoms were you having while you didn't have your period? Or were you so consumed with just like how, like the ego driven, so like getting the compliments and feeling good and looking in the mirror? Were you so driven by that you didn't realize any of the other symptoms? Or were you quite aware personally of other symptoms that you might have had from losing your period? Like, were you tired or whatever?
Not really. I mean, I actually, at the age of 21, got diagnosed with colitis, which is like Crohn's.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's another symptom of like stress and anxiety, and putting too much stress on my body, overworking, and I didn't realize. And the funny thing is because I was so obsessed with, you know, being successful and the other stuff rather than my health, I just ignored it. you know? And like, even with me losing my periods, like, I just ignored it. Like, I didn't care. And that's a form of self-sabotage. Like, it's a form of like, I don't deserve to like have my period, or I don't deserve to like look after myself, you know? And it's insanity at the end of the day, because what's happening is that I'm like basically fucking up my life and getting ill in the process. But all I care about is being skinny. All I care about is being successful.
But also, I think, do you agree in the sense that I believe there's also such a lack of education around us females and about how important the menstrual cycle is, or just having it in society?
100%. And what I've seen in the fitness industry is that a lot of girls, I'm one of them, literally starve themselves to the point where they do not have any fat in their body. And they're all losing their periods because women are meant to have fat, but they have this ideal that they need to be low body fat and shredded.
Yeah.
And it's insane. And
I remember, it was one of the last events I did with Pro. It was at Robots. You came. The one with all the shoes there. I do
remember, yeah.
Yeah. I was in like recovery then. I just started recovery of like exercise obsession and losing my period. I was still very open about the fact I didn't have my period, but I was triggered as hell at that event, to the point that I went home and I smashed gym workouts. I didn't eat for like 3 days after that. And like, it's obviously just a form of self-sabotage, but that I was so triggered by being at that event, and I looked at all of these girls and some guys, but guys can tend to get away with it a little bit more. But I looked at all of these girls and I said, like, I was thinking, it's so nice that you're all there for each other, but you're all there for each other because you're all suffering the same fucking problem. You're all so obsessed that like don't get me wrong, you're all together and you're all friends because you're all into the same thing, but none of you are addressing the elephant in the room. And it was just, you're all so like obsessed and no one's seeing it.
Yeah. Do you know what the mad thing is? Is that, you know, I was a personal trainer for years.
Yeah.
And Robots, and I'm not going to go into bitching about Robots, but I left Robots because I had my own issues with just how the ego would come out. Okay. Even in influencer events, like, I got to the point where I realized the wellness industry wasn't well, and I was going to these places and like putting so much pressure on myself to basically do 1 million burpees and to do this and do that. And Robots was the last studio that I worked for, because I decided that I didn't want to be a trainer anymore in that industry, because it was triggering stuff off for me as well.
What were those traits that you found that you had, or that you found in that industry, or that, you know, like, agreed, I'm the same. I don't want to slag off that industry. It gave me a career that I
my God, no, I love the industry. 100%. I love the.
But what were the things that you felt? And because I don't believe it's necessarily the industry's fault. I think it's just like everything else. There's so many factors to it. But what did you find that what traits were triggered in you when you?
Yeah. So for me, it was perfectionism, comparing yourself to others, which is like, you've either got it or you don't. Like, that's just my nature. I can walk into a room and naturally someone with an eating disorder in the past will be triggered off by someone else that is skinnier than me or fitter than me or whatever. And I'm a competitive person. So that would trigger off something in me that I'd have to compete with that person. I see there's a lot of emphasis on what you look like. And that was my main problem. So I'm not slagging off the industry at all. And actually, this is the fitness industry. So it's not anyone particular. This is the fitness industry. But my whole life, every single industry that I've been in the modeling industry. I've been in the, I've worked in like Gucci and Abercrombie and Hollister, which is like front of house kind of industry. I've done working clubs industry, fitness. Everything has been about what I've looked like. So I put so much pressure on myself to look a certain way. And that's what I realized, was that my eating disorder was consumed by trying to fit in to this mold. And I couldn't do it anymore, because I kept on trying to basically compete with that. And then I was going home and feeling shit about myself because I didn't feel good in myself in the first place. So when I took that step back, and when I got offered that job at BXR's front of house manager, where I wasn't a trainer, but I was able to like assert myself as a manager, not and be on the other side, it changed everything for me. And now I just don't give a shit.
Yeah.
So I'm not slagging off the fitness industry itself. I'm slagging off just generally, like, it's an industry that is about the external.
100%. And it's not necessarily, I don't want anyone, this is definitely not a podcast where for people to feel as if, like we're segregating. We both still love to train, and we both, it's just, it's more of actually like how the fitness industry, our perception of the fitness industry was at that time, it was quite triggering.
Yeah.
So can we talk a bit more? You say about how like you were really competitive and that you would find yourself trying to compete. What were those thoughts that were going around your head? Like how were you trying to compete? Was it through restrictive eating? Was it like can you tell us a bit about like a day in your life when you were like at your most like triggered or like competitive state?
Yeah, I mean, like I have an addictive personality, so like I get addicted to food quickly. Hence why I'm for more mind-altering substances. And like how it would work was like I'm also a very structured person. So like I would get up, I would, count my calories back in the day. I would look at what I'm eating and I wouldn't eat carbs. I would train about 2 times.
No, what's your star sign?
I'm a Cancer.
Okay. Just wondering.
Why?
I'm just always quite interested. Are you someone that you're quite emotional, but you won't necessarily show it straight away? It's more like you're quite emotional person, but you're like, you kind of put on a bit of a front to start with?
Not naturally, because I am a very what you see is what you get person, but my innate, because I've been through so much in my life.
Yeah.
Have this strong exterior because that's what I've had to grow up being like. But I am a very like I don't lie about being sensitive. Like I show my.
But like there is kind of like a bit of a there's a strong persona, but underneath you're a little bit soft and a little bit like emotional.
Well, I've had to protect myself at a very young age.
Yeah. So
naturally, when people meet me, they think I'm strong. But when you get to know me, like I'm an absolute like sensitive person.
Yeah. Sorry.
But yeah, no,
carry on. But the day in your life. Sorry.
Yeah, so the day in my life would just be like, I'd have to basically always be doing something, and then I would restrict, and then obviously the binge purge cycle would come. For me, my main problem with that was like I didn't listen to my body. I didn't listen to myself. I didn't ask myself what I needed. I didn't rest. Like now, I just got home from work at 2 p.m. and I'm resting. Like the reason why I don't binge and purge anymore is because if I want to eat, I bloody eat. I eat carbs now. I eat when I feel like I want to eat. I don't starve myself. And it's so important. I think it's got me, like, I'm 27 now, so it's got me to that place where I'm so happy in my body. But also I actually don't care about having a 6-pack anymore.
Yeah. I
don't care.
Do you think that some of what you went through in childhood led you to your eating disorder?
100%. It was all about control. Like, I couldn't control. When my mum had breast cancer and my family member or whatever was drinking or whatever, I couldn't control what was going on around me. And what I could control was my food and my weight. And somewhere along the line, it gave me some sense of purpose.
Yeah. And
in a way, it helped me. It was helping me. It was like my crutch. It was like my best friend at a time.
Same.
And then there was somewhere along the line, like when I gave up alcohol and drugs, somewhere along the line it stopped working for me and I couldn't control it anymore, and it took control of me.
Yeah, that's exactly the same with me. I would say that I was with a guy for years, and it was like throughout my teenage years, so we were together for like more or less like the amount of time I had lived in Devon. Like it was quite a while, and we were just going through like typical teenage drama, like you get together and you think that's it, you're gonna marry, and then like boys, I'm not saying it's right, but boys do boys things. And yeah, and I was so out of control, and I didn't understand why the relationship was breaking down, and I didn't understand why his eyes was elsewhere, and I would be looking inside, and it was like I couldn't control anything around. 1 minute we were together, next minute we weren't, and it's like, okay, I can't control that, but what can I control? And also, how am I likely to get him to still want to be with me? Well, I'll fit into a certain way about how I look, and I'll control that and make sure I stay in that by controlling my food and controlling how I move.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. I relate to that a lot with my first boyfriend. Like, he almost shaped me into this quiet girl that, like, his mum, like, basically was the manager for Gucci, and he tried to mold me into this, like, prim and proper girl, and I was never like it. But the only way that he could like me is for me to be like that. And it was like I had to try and be someone that I wasn't, and it was tiring.
Yeah, I remember, I must have been like 15, and I've always been a bit like out there with some of the clothes that I wear. COVID definitely dulled me down when I just jumped in leggings and jumpers. But I've always been like really into like quite loud stuff, or like quite quirky stuff. And I must have been about 15, and I went shopping with my mum, and it was at a time when, do you remember when like floral trousers / jeans were like all in? Do you remember that? Yeah. They were just coming in, and I was like, said to mum, I was like, me and mum were shopping, and I was like, I really like those, I'm gonna buy them. And I brought this really cool outfit I thought was cool, and rocked up at his house, and he never invited me out with his friends. Yet this one particular time he was like, do you want to come down the park with my friends? And his friends, me and my friends perceived as like the cool group. They were a few years older, they were like the cool group in school, and I was like, oh, this is wicked, I'm gonna go. Anyway, I rocked up in my cool outfit, what I thought was cool, and he was like, you're not going wearing those, are you?
Fuck off.
And from then, and then I started to look at the groups of girls that him and his friends started hanging around with, which I'm actually friends with some of those girls now, but at the time that I championed those, and I was like, right, okay, I've got to look like those. So I bought the same jeans as them, I wore the same tops as them, I started running, like I tried to change like my whole persona to try and fit into. I went and bought a Michael Kors watch, for Christ's sake, just because some of the girls had them.
Yeah, I relate, and I say this all the time, but it's the same with me. Like, I went to a Jewish private school where it was all like with like wealthy kids, and all the girls were very like, I don't know if it's a Jewish word, but like Becky, very like girly girl, prim and proper. And there's me, who was a complete tomboy. Like, I was a tomboy. I loved football. You know, I didn't really have a maternal mum growing up, and I had like an older brother, and he was like my best mate. So like, I was a tomboy. So I went to the school, and I had my flat caps, and I had my like ghetto like, and like, but it was fun at the beginning when I was like in year 7, but then I got to like year 8 and 9, and I realized that like no guy is gonna like a girl that's a tomboy. So I tried to like fit in with the girly girls and wear dresses and heels, and tried to like wear fake tan, and tried to be this person that I wasn't. And it's like you said, you know, the more you're doing that, the more, one, your self-esteem is going down because you know it's not you. 2, you're losing your identity. And 3, you're like selling yourself to the devil. And like, you know, it's like you're keeping up this facade, and it's tiring. Keeping up this facade, one way or another, you're going to self-sabotage, because you know deep down it's not you, and you're not accepting. So when I started to really work on myself and go into therapy when I got sober at 18, I started to figure out who Lauren is. Like, now, I don't care. Some days I wear heels and makeup, and then some days I don't care. Like, you know, and now I'm happier. And I think now that I'm happier doing that and being who I am, the more I don't feel like I need to self-sabotage, because I am my authentic truth.
How did you recover?
I went into rehab for 4 months when I was 18. Like, I was drinking so badly. I was doing drugs that I said I'd never do. I was like, basically.
At what age was this, sorry?
18.
Okay, so you were introduced to weed and fags at like 11, did you say?
So I started drinking at 11, young. I mean, I had family that were doing it. I started smoking weed at 14.
Okay.
Started doing MDMA and ecstasy at like 16. I was smoking like a chimney. And then my eating disorder came when I was like 14. So I was like battling like bulimia and restricting and then drinking and drugs. But the funny thing is like I was doing a talk earlier around addiction, and addiction's funny because people think that if you're an addict, then you're a whiskey drinking a park bench or you're a crack addict on the side of the street. Like I was a champagne drinker in nightclubs. And if you looked at me, I had the most perfect life and everyone wanted to be me. It was sad. But I would go home every night and like basically like self-sabotage. But if you saw me, you'd think that I was this like, because I was a functioning addict and I made you see me as this perfect person.
Yeah. Which
unfortunately, and I know this is so brutal, is very common today, where a lot of people are behind closed doors covering up their facades
and putting it on other people as well. I think I've noticed. So like I was exactly the same. Sorry, I wasn't in. I was going out, but I would go out a couple of weekends, and then I was only like weekend partier. The rest of the time was restricting in the gym, and I would say I was 100% addicted to fitness, restrictive. I had a horrendous relationship with food, but what people saw was the personal trainer that's fit and loves a burpee. Like people saw me and wanted to be wanted to have the motivation that I had, wanted to have the determination that I had, wanted to have the discipline that I had. Little did they know, I'm having a conversation with them and I'm not thinking about what they're talking about. I'm thinking about my next meal and how I'm going to make it the least calories possible.
How sad is that?
I know.
But
I don't regret it though, because I think it shapes you into who you are today. So
100%.
Talk to me about the recovery then. So you were drinking a lot and then at 18 you went into rehab. Why rehab? How bad did it get?
I mean, I was introduced to 12-step therapy when I was like 14 years old. My mum was drinking really heavily and she got introduced to 12-step therapy. Do you know what 12 steps are?
Is that Russell Brand?
It's like Russell Brand. No, he talks about 12 steps, but 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous is basically steps you go through to get sober, but you can do it in any substance of your choice, not really about the substance. So, you know, it's just a type of therapy.
Okay.
Again?
I was just agreeing. I was like, okay.
Yeah, so it's just a type of therapy. It's like CBT, DBT, but 12-step therapy is the most well-known one when it comes to like addiction. And I mean, I was going to meetings with my mum, like recovery meetings, like AA meetings, if you know that. And I was going in there like from a very young age and I was identifying obviously my traits. So even before I picked up drinking drugs, like I had the traits of an alcoholic or a drug addict, because it wasn't about the substance, it was about me. And I would pick up anything to change what I feel. That's how it is. That's what addiction is. When you have addictive personality, you know, I can sit here and have 10 non-alcoholic beers. That's an addiction, you know? And it's not necessarily about the drugs and alcohol. It's about why I'm doing it. It's about the feelings. It's about trying to avoid my feelings. It's about, you know, not feeling good enough. It's about, you know, the underlying reasons why I'm doing it. And I, at the age of 18, like literally hit rock bottom. I was throwing up every day. I was burning out. I was, you know, in a very controlling relationship with a guy that basically just was very verbally abusive. You know, I was drinking all the time and I just couldn't do it anymore. So I ended up basically telling my parents that I want to go into rehab. And I went into like a rehab in Harley Street for 4 months to do intense therapy. And I got basically taken out of society and put into like a group setting.
Okay.
And I was doing like intense trauma therapy, inner child work. I was doing psychotherapy. And it was basically like me basically rebuilding my life again, because I'd become this person that was not a nice person. I hated myself so much because of what I was doing. And if I didn't get sober, and if I didn't go through therapy, I'd be exactly the same person that I was today.
Yeah.
And I never did.
What do you have any things that you learned through therapy that you would share with other people that might be able to help them?
100%. I mean, for me, it was about finding a new purpose. So, like, you know, the first thing I had to like back away from people that were drinking and doing drugs. I had to take myself out of the environment. That was just it. You know, I had to start to really work on myself. So in the steps you learn about, like, you know, forgiving yourself for your wrongs. You learn about like having a higher power. So like having a bit of spirituality. So I always say to people, like, meditate, get down on your knees, hand things over. You're not in control. Really realizing that you're not perfect. You know, I had to start to realize that I'm not perfect. I'm going to make mistakes, but I have to forgive myself for them. Like, acceptance as well is so important. Like, accept the things that I cannot control. Like I said, with the eating disorder, I had to try and control everything, but I couldn't. So I had to accept that this is life. You know, I had to rebuild and relearn, you know, everything about my thinking. So I had to start thinking positively. I had to start seeing world in a different way. I had to start to have different perspectives of life. You know, I started to find my passions and my purpose. So at the age of 18, I started going into schools with the Amy Winehouse Foundation, talking about addiction. I went all over the UK to do talks around addiction. I found my purpose of speaking. So I went with that. And the more I started to grow my self-esteem in that area, like my gratitude list, my affirmations, you know, going for runs that I love. You know, I'm not saying everyone needs to go for runs, but I started to do things that I wanted to do. You know, the more I was going away from, you know, my self-sabotaging behaviors, creating new habits and new patterns, you know, and doing things that I knew were working and better for me, the less likely I was going to go pick up a drink.
Yeah.
And I...
Sorry, go on.
No, it's fine.
I was just going to say, for you, how did you find that purpose? Because I'm sure like people will be listening and they might be in like a bit of a tears, or like they're in that whole releasing stage where they know they need to let like exercise and controlling the food go, but they don't know what to turn to. So how did you find that purpose?
It's just about trying new things. Like I always say, go back to your inner child, go back to, like, you know, you before society. Like, what did you enjoy doing? Like, I used to love playing football. Like, play football. Because that's you before anyone else's opinions. That's you before you picking up a job and doing something else. Sit in a room by yourself. Sit there, ask yourself, check in with yourself. A lot of people don't do this. They're constantly consumed by other people's thoughts. They're consumed on social media by other people's opinions. Sit in the room and ask yourself what you need out today. Because I don't have that answer. You have that answer.
Yeah.
You know, even in life coaching, I don't tell people what to do. I say you have the answer, but what you're doing is you're going further and further away from the answer. Sit in a room and check in with yourself. Go back to your little child and go back to the days where you were younger and ask yourself what you need. If you enjoy horse riding, so I was doing a podcast earlier, and this girl who also went to rehab was talking about how, you know, in her younger child days, she loved horse riding. So she went back to that and she loved it. And that's the purpose. I don't know how, you know, motivational speaking got, like, you know, in the middle of it, but I'm like, I believe everything has a reason. Like, I trusted the process. I got sober. The energy that I was putting out as well, like, you know, I was putting out this positive energy of this new Lauren, and it came to me.
Yeah.
But if I'm constantly manifesting this negative energy and this unhappiness, I'm going to constantly be around negative people.
Definitely. Yeah. A big thing of when I was growing up, I'm very lucky. And I honestly, sometimes it shocks me, but my parents are split up, and my stepdad and my stepmom are just two extra parents. We actually laugh and joke as a family that I have more in common with my step parents than I do my own parents. And I was very lucky that my stepdad would spend hours with me. It was in our garage because he used to smoke. So he used to smoke in the garage, and we would sit for hours, and he would say to me, like, right, what do you want and why do you want it? And I'm really grateful that I had that time that's enabled me to like kind of be here now, really. But he always said to me, look back at what you did as a kid, And like literally similar to what you just said of like before what were you doing for fun, go and do that again. And I found I played schools the whole time. Like I converted my mum's spare room into my classroom. My nan would come around and babysit, and I would be telling her off. I'll be sending her outside into the garden to go play by herself. But I think that's what's led me to, you know, sharing these stories now and finding that new purpose that's not fitness. I'm still teaching people something, and it really, but you're able to share your story as well. So yeah, I completely agree with like going back to that inner child place now. Lauren, how's your life different now?
Oh, do you know what? Do you know what the funniest thing was that I think that what I do is I wake up daily and I just don't put pressure on myself. Okay. And I feel like I have this new way of thinking. Yeah. So I've got a couple of tattoos on my arm. So like one is trust the process, you know, not everything. Like, I mean, I say this in every bloody podcast. So like anyone that hears this will be like, oh, I've heard this before. But, you know, everything happens for a reason, but also like, you know, you got to see life as a journey and you got to trust the journey. And, you know, for me, I've learned to understand and accept my bad days and accept my struggle and accept, you know, that not everything will go my way. So, you know, if a guy breaks up with me, I take a step back. I'm just, prime example, like a guy breaks up with me, I take a step back and I'm like, okay, you know, I'm not going to die. It is what it is. And it is not about the world. It is not about what I go through. So my mum, I'll give you a prime example. My mum, when she got diagnosed with breast cancer, I was 12 years old. And the first thing I did was I drank. I went, fuck this. I drank. My mum got diagnosed again last year. And the first thing I did was I dealt with the problem and I was present for her. Two exactly the same things that I'd been through, but different mindsets. Yeah. The reason why I am now able to deal with it in a different way is because I'm able to look at it as I don't have to self-sabotage in this. I've got a choice. And this is anything in life. You know, we all have a choice of how we react to certain situations. And you can either live with it or live against it. And I choose to live with it and I choose to deal with it. And that's how I stay happy as a person. And I let things go. I don't stay angry towards people. I have a lot of faith that, you know, like I said, this is the journey. And I also, one of the main things that I really love to work on is I love to stay, like, I used to have this whole thing around, you know, money and cars and success and, you know, status. And that made me a very, very, very unhappy person. And now, you know, I've got more emphasis on connection and family and friends and true actual like things that make me feel good. So I'm much happier as a person. And that's what I think a lot of people need to start, you know, looking into. And I'm not saying, because I did a post about this yesterday, like I'm not saying don't strive for all these external things, but you need to have your internal intact. Like I said, I had everything externally growing up. What was I doing? I was bulimic, drinking, doing drugs. I wasn't happy. So I didn't get it. I was like, I've got everything on the outside, but how I'm not happy. But my whole emphasis was on the outside. It wasn't on the inside. I didn't love myself.
Yeah, definitely.
Learn how to love yourself before anything else.
And have you found that since you started to strive for like more connections, or you've really loved yourself, that actually the external things have come more easily anyway?
100%. 100%. Yeah.
Lauren, thank you so much. Where can people find you?
Instagram would be the best. I do have a website coming. I've got a link tree as well, but just follow me on Instagram at I am Lauren White, and DM me if you want any advice.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much. This has been
welcome.
So helpful, and it's so lovely to hear like your story based on like losing your period and dealing with an ED from such a different, because every single person's different, right? And every single person experiences things so different. So yeah, guys, please go check out Lauren and go see her good vibes on Instagram, and don't forget to rate this podcast, and if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next one. Lauren, stay there. I'm just going to press stop so these buggers can go away.